So we're very excited to have you on today's workshop, and we're looking forward to today's panel. My name is Carrie Zanato. I'm with Fit for Commerce. I'm a senior consultant. I've spent time both on the agency side as well as the client side, so I have a nice view into both sides of the fence. And before I welcome our wonderful panel, just a few housekeeping notes. Please check the chat. There'll be a link so you can check your site's web vitals if you haven't already done that. And we have a few questions that we've gathered along with registrations, and we encourage you to submit more questions as we go along in the panel. If you have a specific topic that you'd like more information on, we're happy to help you after. Finally, we are recording this and we'll share this with you in the coming days. Great. So quick introductions, Siggy.
Hi.
Hi.
Yes.
Quick introduction.
Yeah. Hi. I'm Siggy. I'm the CTO of Guide to Iceland. We are an e-commerce that specializes in travel. And we have a marketplace where we have been optimizing and working really hard on making sure everything in the SEO part is top-notch. And that includes the page speed and core web vitals.
Okay. Ajay.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Ajay Kapoor. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Layer Zero. I'm really excited to be able to talk to everyone today about the topic of core web vitals. Layer Zero is a platform that allows you to get a sub-second website. So it's somewhat pertinent to this topic here, and it can be used for traditional websites. It's also the leading Jamstack platform for headless websites. So there's a lot of developer features there as well. So thank you so much for hosting this, Carrie, and look forward to the discussion.
Yeah, appreciate that. And I know we'll be getting into a lot more details as we go along. Great. So today's agenda will be going over the topic in general, and then Ajay will get deeper into Core Web Vitals and the Google algorithm update, best practices, and then of course we'll go to Q&A with Siggy. Great. And Fit for Commerce, a little bit about Fit for Commerce. We're a boutique consultancy that helps brands and retailers with both B2B and B2C with their accelerated growth. We help digital and omni-channel strategies, marketing technologies, organizational design, and much more. Great. And Ajay.
Great, thank you. So as I mentioned, Layer Zero helps you get a sub-second instant website. Go to layerzero.co to learn more about this. You can see that the speeds that we're talking about here for top brands such as Revolve, Shoe Carnival, Akira, and others are all well under a second. These are very important for passing what's called Core Web Vitals, which would be the subject of today's topic. In addition to that, it is a developer platform to handle everything above your APIs to manage your modern front end, deploy it, and allow team members to collaborate on that front end. So that's the product, and we'll get into the details in a moment. So hopefully you guys have gotten an email from us, or if you look in the chat, there is a link. That link that you see here on this slide is in the chat. It's a way to measure your Core Web Vitals. Now we're going to get into Core Web Vitals and what it is, but for now, it would be great to have folks go in there and see whether you're passing, and then go to the poll that we put up here and see if you are, and then indicate whether you're passing, yes, no, or you don't know. To pass, you need to have a green. You need to be in the green for all three of those metrics. So we have someone here, Andy Russell, saying, I don't see anything in the chat. So maybe we can repost that link in the chat.
We should have that. That should be up now.
Yeah.
Thanks for letting us know.
Great. So maybe what we'll do is this. Should we why don't I go to the next slide, walk through that, and then we'll come back to the results on this poll in a couple, to give people a minute to kind of, if they haven't tested it already, they can go test it while I'm doing that. When you go to that website, it'll take a minute or so for your website to be analyzed. But what you may find is you're not passing. And what I'll say is don't be alarmed. In the world of e-commerce websites, only 13% pass. So if you are passing, that's phenomenal. If you're not passing, the purposes of us gathering here today is to help you pass. So when you look at the topic of Core Web Vitals, so what is it? It's a set of 3 metrics that Google has come up with that represent perceives the most important metrics as it relates to speed. And we have been involved in site speed and site speed measurement for many years. As anyone on this call knows, there's probably 50 different measurements, and they may tell you 50 different things. Some may say you have a phenomenally fast site. Others may say that you have an incredibly slow site, and you may be measuring both simultaneously, and they'll both tell you the polar opposite type of results. What's really great about these is that they really correlate with what your customers are perceiving as speed. And we think Google did a great job there. And the 3 of them are called LCP, which is largest contentful paint, FID, which is first input delay, and CLS, which is cumulative layout shift. We'll be getting into what those mean specifically, but to pass, you need to be at this number needs to be to pass. There's certain kind of there's certain thresholds you have to reach, and it's not something that they measure synthetically, like with a crawler that measures your site. It's through the fact that they have measurements in Chrome, so people who are really visiting your site, and then some of those folks have opted in to say, hey, when I visit websites, we're going to anonymously measure the speed on those websites, and then I'm going to report that speed to Google. Then Google aggregates that data for your website, and so we're looking at what's called real user measurement. It's real users, speed across these 3 metrics. If you pass all 3, then you pass. As you can see here, only 13% pass all 3. Almost everyone passes FID. We won't spend too much time on that. The main challenges for passing are on LCP and CLS, and we'll get into that in a moment. I think maybe we've given people enough time here. Carrie, do you want to go through the, okay, great. So we've got 18% of folks, hopefully everyone can see these results here. Yeah. If not, 18% are passing. So that's great. That's better than the 13% we measured across the across the set of 6,500 e-commerce websites. 47 are definitely not passing, and then 35% don't know. So, if you go visit this tool, you'll be able to find out whether you pass or not.
That sounds great. Thank you, Ajay. And one of the reasons that we are here today is not only because we know how critical search is, whether you are a small boutique or a huge brand. These numbers are critical to driving and scaling your business. And you may or may not know that starting this month, Google is going to start using this page experience as part of their ranking system, which of course, as Ajay has outlined and we'll get into more deeply, is the Core Web Vitals. And those are, as Ajay says, designed to experience as a user how consumers are interacting with the pages. So the rankings here are speed of the customer experience, search ranking in traffic, and speed plus traffic, which of course equals conversions and loyalty, providing that good experience to the customers.
Great, thank you. So let's get into more detail here. You can go to the next slide. Let's go into each of these metrics. So there's 3 metrics. The last one is a pretty straightforward one to pass. We're going to spend bulk of this conversation on the first 2, LCP and CLS. So largest contentful. So before I get into any of these, what you'll see below each of these is kind of green and then orange and red. So for you to be able to pass, let's look at largest contentful paint. It needs to be that when you look at the 75th percentile of the slowest, 75th percentile of your users, meaning your average speed may be 2.4 seconds, your median might be 2.4 seconds, but your 75th might be 4 seconds. In that case, you're not in the good range. So just note that if you're looking up averages, that's not what Google's looking at. They're looking at the bottom 25th percentile, the best of the bottom 25th percentile. Those slowest people, they're looking at the best of those, and that's the kind of number that they look at. So it's like a histogram measurement. And if you are able then at the 75th percentile to be better than 2.5 seconds on largest contentful paint, then you're green there. If you're better than 0.1 on cumulative layout shift, then you're green there. And if you're better than 100 milliseconds, faster than 100 milliseconds on FID, then you're green there. Green on all three means you pass. Okay, so that's what passing means. Let's get into each of these metrics. Largest contentful paint is a phenomenal metric. Of all these metrics, it's the one that, if you kind of only had to fix one, focus on that one. Definitely work on all of them, but if you had to fix one, work on that. This is, when they say largest contentful paint, that means what is the largest image above the fold on the page? And it may not be an image, it may be a text block, it may be, but what's the largest element on the page above the fold? When does that thing show up completely? Usually in the context of e-commerce, it's on a product page, the main image of the product. On a home page, it may be, the main kind of hero image that you lead with on your website. So in an e-commerce setting, on a category page, it's often one of the, the top product, the image for that one, that thumbnail image there. So it's often in the context of e-commerce and image. And what it's saying is that how long does it take for that to show up? And what the studies have shown is that what people are really waiting for when, you can play all the tricks you want with spinners and do some other things, but if they're not seeing that image, they don't feel the site is loaded. It really correlates closely to that perception that the page is loaded. And why is that important? There's a study out there that shows that the stress that someone feels when they're waiting for a website to load is equivalent to watching a horror movie. And so while you could look at the 50 measures that are out there, what Google does is, what is that metric that identifies the end of that stress? And the end of that stress is the largest contentful paint. That's what people are really waiting for. You could put a spinner there, that doesn't end the stress. That's kind of a distraction that's maybe even more stressful. So that's the last thing you want people to do when they perceive your brand, is feel like they're going to a horror movie. And so largest contentful paint, if you had to pick one, is the most important here. And it, in some senses, also in some ways the hardest to fix. Cumulative layout shift, CLS.
Quick question on largest contentful paint. How does that ever-present email sign up page, the pop-up that comes on the email sign up when you're waiting, does that have impact on your LCP?
It does. It will negatively impact it. So, you have to be thoughtful. And I know Siggy, through his experience, we'll talk about that in his section on the trade-offs one needs to make between having a pop-up like that. I think what I'll do is that we'll spend some time on what are some thoughtful ways to have your cake and eat it too. Have your email signups in addition to not hurting yourself on largest contentful paint. But it absolutely has an impact. Great question. Cumulative layout shift. So we've all been to websites, especially those news websites with lots of ads. You load the website and maybe it loads quickly. You start to try to scroll, and right as you're about to scroll, an ad or some other element pops up under your finger and you click on the ad. I feel like it's almost deliberate on these news sites. It's a way to get you to click through to these ads. But that's another thing Google wanted to end, because that creates an incredible amount of stress when you're going through a page and things are bouncing around left and right. So it is what it sounds like. Layout shifts are bad. What you want to be able to do is just present everything that's there, and we'll get into the techniques that you need, but it's I don't say it's easy. There's certain things here that are very easy to fix, and then Siggy can talk about the hard stuff. First input delay, like I said, most people pass this. We're going to spend less time on this. This is the amount of time before you're able to sort of interact with elements on the page. Now, scrolling, I don't believe is included in this. So scrolling to me is the first interaction people do on commerce, and that's not included in this. This is about clicking on the search field, clicking add to cart, interacting with buttons. and that sort of thing. And so now typically there's two things here. Number one, most sites pass this, you don't have to worry about it. Number two, in an e-commerce setting, it's not like the first thing one does on any page is immediately try to interact with stuff. You have to consume the information on that page before you're ready to interact. And generally speaking, you can do that well within the thresholds of time that are listed here. So what we found, so Google, why did they pick these? It's because if you pass all three of these things, you're 24% less likely to abandon pages, abandon the website. And so Google's incentives are very aligned with yours. If people are actively buying on your website, which is what you want, the customer's happy, Google is happy because their ads are performing better for you and you're going to buy more ads. And you're of course happy because your customers are buying from your website. And so they were very thoughtful about the right metrics here. And while they're not perfect, they're phenomenally better than other things we've seen. And the last thing that I'll just reshare about this is that if you go to websites and do synthetic testing is where you take and you run a test right there and then, that could yield totally different results. The beauty of these tests is that they're kind of hard to cheat, and you have to earn it. It's through real customers visiting your website through the Chrome browser, which then gets aggregated as data, and that's how they're able to do the histogram and figure out what the 75th percentile is. So the only way to kind of really make this work well is to actually improve the experience for your visitors, which I think is a good thing for the market in general. So we can go to the next slide. There is a urgent need for this because as of this month, Google has about more than a year ago told us this was going to happen, and they've kind of started to upgrade their algorithm, I think, on a rolling basis, such that these not only fixing those things above not only are going to improve your conversion rate and revenue, but now as of June, it's going to have a second effect, which is you're going to rank higher, which of course then allows you to have more traffic for the same amount of spend on content and ads. And as a result of that, you get even higher revenue because of the increased traffic that you have. So this is critically important. We see so many people thinking about this problem because of this impact to SEO. Google is using their breadth and heft in the market to say site speed matters. We can't allow apps to become the default way that people interact because they are dominant on websites, and websites are where commerce happens, and they need to make sure websites have a great experience. Now, the interesting thing is a lot of people talk about going headless. If you've heard of the term of headless websites, app-like websites, PWAs, using a React website, using a Vue website, an Angular website. There's many terms for this idea of separating the front end from the back end. One of the biggest reasons in IT teams convince CEOs and others to do this is they say, hey, our website's going to be faster. Now, interestingly, when we went and crawled all of the Internet Retailer 500 websites, the US list, we saw that the average headless website, the largest contentful paint, was actually worse than the kind of traditional website. So about 10%, maybe it's now up to 15 or 20% of websites in the IR 500 are headless, but on average, they're slower than non-headless websites. So that's a really important point. Just by virtue of going and building a headless website, you are not guaranteed to have a faster site. Now, a headless website can be much, much faster than a traditional website. A headless website on average looks like it's a little bit slower. So how you develop that headless website has a big impact. It's sort of, you have more freedom to fail and more freedom to do some things that are great. Siggy and the team at Guide to Iceland did some things that are great. He'll talk about that. In fact, anyone who's using, whether it's that team or others, anyone that's using the Layer 0 platform is able to get phenomenal results, as you can see in that chart on the right. Go to the next slide. So let's go into that first metric, largest contentful paint. So how do you optimize for this? This is the one, and this is the metric that probably takes the most, let's call it full stack, holistic approach to solving. There are things related to the serving up of the content. And so your server, optimizing your server is really important. I'd say the number one thing you can do there is ensure that content is cached at the edge of the network. And then you can even do more exotic things like stream that content into the browser ahead of the tap if you really want to get exotic with it. And a lot of people are doing that as well. But you got to start with the basics, which is you want to improve your server response time. But the best way to do that is ensure your content is cached at the edge through a content delivery network. Now, when we say cached, it's really important that it's very easy to cache images, and it's very easy to cache JavaScript files and CSS files, the more static content. What's difficult and what we find people have struggle to cache are API calls, so the data that is required for, say, a product page and or rendered HTML. So those the type of data that comes out of your database or your content platform or your e-commerce, PIM or that type of thing, that kind of core data, if you think of a product page in largest contentful paint, before you can go fetch the image that you're going to show that is the largest image, you need the HTML or the API call that tells you the URL for that image. So we find that most CDNs aren't great at caching that stuff, and you need to really focus on getting your CDN to do that sort of thing. Other things that are kind of straightforward is make sure your images are optimized, so that make sure your text files are compressed. I mean, there's some basic low-hanging fruit that all the tools out there will say, hey, these are the things you need to go fix. So make sure that the files themselves are as small as possible and are optimized. Then you have to get into some of the things. You could have all the caching you want. You could have small files, but your front end may decide not to show that hero image until it's done a ton of other things. So what you want to do is optimize that front end. So reduce the amount of time that the CSS is blocking the actual rendering. So you can minify the CSS. I know I'm going into some detail here. These slides will be shared, and you can read this detail later. The last thing is that there's a ton of things that the browser is trying to do in JavaScript, and you want to minimize that sort of thing. And so you want that rendering to happen as fast as possible. So this is a holistic problem that spans the server, the edge, and the stuff you do in the browser. And it takes a lot of thought to optimize. And me, Siggy, and others on our teams, at least on the layer 0 end, are happy to advise you in detail, look at your website and tell you what the lowest hanging fruit is to fix. Okay, so cumulative layout shift. This is this idea on news sites where things bounce around the page even after and once it's loaded, and that needs to be minimized. So this is a great one because there are some things you can do here that are very straightforward. The biggest thing you can do is for all things on the page, whether they be images or whether they be ads or iframes or embedded things, try to set the heights of all of those elements in your CSS before this stuff shows up. So your CSS should just, everything on the page should have a known height, and then the content comes in and fills up that slot, and it doesn't fill out more than that slot, causing a little bit of a shift. And once you have that shift, you get penalized. And so I just say that's the great thing about what I just said. And again, you're going to have these slides, and you can hand it over to your front end developer, is that it's straightforward to fix. Then there's some other things that are more complex to fix. And like I said, Siggy can talk about some of those if people have questions about it. Dynamically injected content is something you just want to be careful about. You want to avoid inserting it above content that's already there. And again, if you're going to do that, make sure it's within a slot with a fixed height. And then web fonts can create some issues as well. The last one is FID, first input delay. Like I said, most of you probably passed this already. The way to fix this is to break up these long tasks into smaller tasks. Now, when we're talking about this, what are we talking about? We're talking about the JavaScript that is running in the browser. And this, fortunately, this is pretty hard to fix if you're not passing. Fortunately, most people are passing. So there's a kind of whole session we could spend on this one, and I think it's beyond the scope of what we want to do here, but it's a pretty technical discussion. And fortunately, there's some good tools to at least tell you where your sort of your JavaScript is too heavy, and we can point you to those at the, if you want to talk to us. If you go to the next slide, the core web vitals can be measured through a variety of tools, one of which we kind of showed you before, where it sounds like some of you guys went and did your measurements. I'm sure you're familiar with some of those. The other really important tool is the Google Search Console. Okay, so that is where you often go to just check out whether Google is indexing your site in the appropriate way. There's all these new tabs now on Core Web Vitals. So I will say this, at the highest level, it's very useful to get Google's understanding of your, in aggregate on your pages, how many you pass and how many you don't pass. And so what you can see here is kind of over time. It looks at all your URLs on your website, and it sort of comes in and tells you, okay, you're good on 69 of them. On 132, you need improvement, and on 0 of them, in this case, you're in a really bad situation. So that's where it's great. It's great to get Google to tell you what they see in terms of your site. There are some real challenges, though, in using this tool to actually fix problems. So it can take days to weeks to see that the changes you make are actually having a positive effect. It's probably one of the biggest issues. It can be hard to identify among the good or among the medium, just exactly what pages you're talking about. They kind of break things up for you, but sometimes it's very hard to tell specifically, hey, is it my what's new category pages, or is it other types of category pages? They don't do a great job of that. It's also impossible to A/B test things, because some of these improvements you need to make may have an impact or may not. So if you go to the next slide, one thing that's just worth looking at, this is a side piece of our tool. It's not the kind of core part of our tool. It is a real-time, real user measurement analytics tool, such that you get some of that data that I just showed you, but it's happening in real time. That's important because you can make changes, see the immediate impact, and then know over the next 28 days, which is the kind of rolling period in which the Search Console reports things, is that, oh, you're going to have positive results because in the first few days you've seen a clear impact to the change you just made. It also supports the ability to do A/B testing, and it's a free tool that you can use on an unlimited basis. Any company can go use it, and you can see that URL down there, layer0.co/RUM, and it's something that you can go use and drop into your website today. It's very easy to install. So with that, I think I'll turn it over to Kari or to Siggy himself to talk about his journey on this very in detail on what they did to optimize for Core Web Vitals. So Siggy, thank you so much, and thanks for being a customer, and take it away.
Well, thank you so much, Ajay. Yeah, so I'm Siggy. I'm the CTO of Guide to Iceland. We have been in business for a while, and one of the biggest things that we have been focusing on is making sure that our SEO efforts are as strong as possible. And myself, I've been obsessed about PageSpeed ever since I first learned about it 8 years ago. But it is truly a struggle on a merchant website when you have so many things that you have on your site that you need to present your product or whatever, and it's a struggle
For sure.
And we have been for the past few years working really hard on improving our page speed, and we've completely rewritten our front end. So now it's our website is a headless headless technology, where we have our backend servers serving the data and our front-end servers rendering everything. And when we first launched, the speed was less than ideal. And through a lot of hard work, we managed to bring down the time it takes for customers to load the page down to really extraordinary levels, and so yeah.
Which of the three metrics did you start with, and which one did you find the most difficult or easy to improve? How did you approach that?
Right. So when we were starting, working really hard on this, the Core Web Vitals weren't a thing yet. There was nothing like it. So we only had what's called the PageSpeed measurement, which is this synthetic benchmark, which is great to get you towards the journey, to a faster website. But when Core Web Vitals went live, we were really excited about it. And the biggest one would be the largest contentful paint. And the trickiest part is usually your computer. When you're a developer, you have some hardcore machine. It can run all the latest games and whatnot, but that's not really the experience of most people, and especially on mobile, since we are now turning everything upside down, and we're comparing everything to a median uh, mobile device on not a fiber optic connection, but an actual 3G connection.
Right.
So yeah, the largest contentful paint is what we focused on first. Yeah.
And how do you maintain the improvements that you've put such effort into?
So this is where automated tools are beautiful. And so one of the things that we do is we look at the measurements. We have the RUM tool in layer 0. We're constantly looking at also a search console, so just monitoring it, going in weekly as well. And we have another tool called Calibrate that it's just monitoring in the background and sending us updates. So we've built in just general monitoring, so that we are up to date whenever we do something incorrect, or it's so easy when you're in a fast-paced environment. You're constantly modifying, adding this, adding that, maybe a pop-up, you get some widget, you add it to your container in Google Tag Manager or what have you, and all of a sudden there's a negative result. And so it's really important to have a tool that's just measuring constantly the experience of the user.
With that, can you give us a couple of examples? One that was like a big win, something that you saw a great improvement of your metrics and your monitoring, and then maybe also something that was perhaps the most difficult, or something that you thought was great and it turned out to not be a win.
Well, okay, so the biggest win for us was when one of the engineers, he had this great idea about just modifying the loading behavior slightly at the JavaScript, and that had such a huge impact. So it took for the page speed score, it took us out of the 60s. We were struggling at 65, 67, and just by modifying slightly how the JavaScript was loaded, it took us in Lightspeed, in Lighthouse measurements, this Pagespeed Insights, up to 99. So that was huge. We were so excited to see that. The tricky one, that's definitely the CLS, because the CLS. So when you are, I'm pretty sure everybody has experienced this. You've got some web page that loads slowly. You're on your mobile, maybe in a train or in a car somewhere, and you click a link, or it pops up a link in your newsfeed. You click on it, you start reading the article, whatever, and then all of a sudden, boom, it shifts, and you don't know where you are. You scroll up, you scroll down, and that part is super easy. Like Ajay mentioned, it's making sure that you declare your height and your width so that the browser knows to take this space and just put it just put a white space on it, and whenever something loads, it loads. But the super tricky ones are the fonts and some specific loading behavior. So we noticed that through extensive research that when you load, so by using the core web vitals, when you load the page, we got some weird score. The pages were reporting, a score that was in the yellow, and we wanted to try to push it to green, but we were unable to figure out where the CLS was yellow, because every time we tested every single one of these URLs, we got green, no matter what we did on our mobile device. We tried so many benchmarks, but then we did something. We tried loading, and then while we were scrolling, we scrolled down, and we saw, it was a simple font rendering where the bold font, we swapped in a different font. We had some custom font, and just the width of the bold font shifted everything. So it went from 1 line to 2 lines, and that basically shifted everything. So this part is tricky when you're trying to push for the last couple of points.
A little bit of detective work.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what advice would you have somebody starting this journey, how to achieve these scores?
You would have to, I would go and start testing on all the tools and get the metrics and just lay them out. The first things you probably want to take a look at is like, are you caching your HTML, or are you rendering it on the server every time? So if you have something like WordPress, the default behavior is that it's rendered every time, and it takes more than a second to deliver often. So that's the first step, and then I would use your own phone, like count the seconds, have a timer, click a button, use your phone, or try to use, not the highest quality phone, because that's not the usually average consumer, but just get a general phone, have a clock or something, and count the seconds. Like, after I click the link, how many seconds are there until I see something? That's gonna give you some hints. And using Pagespeed Insights, they have a lot of fantastic tools there that automatically measure a lot of things, identify specific things that can get you there. So the metric, the Pagespeed Insights metric is not, the holy grail. I think the holy grail is the core web vitals, because that's the actual user that's facing the website. So Google is going to give you a lot of hints of what are the things that could improve your site.
Yeah. Good.
Or and get help, get a free report. Like, you might get experts telling you, what the lowest hanging fruit is, and use that help. It doesn't cost you more than an email.
Right. Very good advice. Good. Let's see. We've got a couple questions. I know, Ajay, you maybe we'll go to, if you're interested in a website audit, we've got the contact information here for Ajay's group, and I know that would be really helpful. Everyone should definitely take advantage of that. Great tool, great information.
It's a free audit. Just send us an email.
Yeah. Awesome. A couple questions. Ajay, you had answered a couple questions in chat as we were going along. Do you want to bring those up?
Yeah, some great questions there, and thank you for asking them. And there's some new open questions as well.
Yeah.
So one thing actually that wasn't asked, but we want to make sure is that the number one thing you should focus on is passing core vitals. The lighthouse score is also, it's what everyone talks about. Are you at 99? Are you at 92? Are you at 51? Really focus on the core vitals, because sometimes those two things aren't exactly correlated. You can pass everything on core vitals. That's the most important thing. And you may have a score that's like in 50 or 60 or something like that, maybe even lower. So we've seen people pass core vitals and have a lower sort of lighthouse score. We've seen, on the other hand, people have a very high lighthouse score and not pass core vitals. So think of the lighthouse score as, it's a bit of a vanity metric. Of course, it's always fun because we've been trained to get 100% on everything we do, to do as high as and as best as we can there. But the truth is, if you really want to pass, it's about your actual users having passing core vitals, and that's where you're going to see your true wins. So that's the first thing I'll share just in general, because I'm seeing some questions in and around that. There's some open questions here. I think this one's for Siggy. It looks like the lighthouse score is high on mobile, 99. Desktop score is only 58. Were you just focused on mobile? Should people focus on only mobile? Do you guys already have the, call it, mobile first sort of indexing in place by Google? How do you think about that?
Well, so yes, the first focus is mobile, and so we heavily focus on making sure the mobile experience is great, because that's where people are shifting. I didn't buy with a mobile phone a couple of years ago. I didn't use it for purchases. Now I almost exclusively use it for purchases. It's so strange, but myself, I've shifted. So having a good experience on mobile is good. Now that said, there are two other things I want to mention. So the desktop score is 58. There's a recent addition to this tool, to the Pagespeed Insights tool. I forget what it's called. It's something about seeing a tree view. It shows you what is happening, how is your JavaScript distributed. And on the desktop, what really brings us down there is we decided when you have a big device that's probably fairly a fair bit stronger than your mobile phone, we're going to display YouTube video in the background. So this is one of the things that you have to think about as business. What are the trade-offs you're willing to have? So identifying where the experience is, that's a core thing to us. We have the 58, that's fairly low, but we tested that. That's mainly because of YouTube. When we disable YouTube, it pops right up. But that's a trade-off on desktop that we are willing to do.
Similar to what
so
what Ajay was talking about with the email pop-up. So choosing.
Absolutely. For email pop-ups, that's another thing that I've seen. I've seen there was a great solution that I saw for the email pop-ups. So a lot of companies, send out these email pop-ups as soon as you go on a page, which is fair. You get signups. But it's gonna impact you negatively. And are you willing to take that? You could test that out using a tool that enables you to do these tests. Another method is to have a call to action where as soon as you click a button, like let's say on your front page, if you want to have a pop-up to sign up for some newsletter or free report or something, you could have an enticing copy, either above the fold or below the fold, where where the user gets excited. He sees, you know, a free report on how to get 99 in Pagespeed Insights. You know, click here to get the report, and you click on the button, and immediately, you know, there's a pop-up that will show you, you know, an email, like enter your email here, and we'll send it to you. You know, that's a great way to solve this this problem. Another thing to look at is I know a lot of people are focused on only looking at their front page, like their first landing page, and that's something you have to stop doing. So you have to watch your money pages. Like where do you want people to come in from the search results? That's the pages you need to have fast. You know, that might be a landing page or a specific product page, you know, or it could be whatever, you know, but that's the important part.
Yeah, let me underscore that. So Carrie, if you could go back one slide. I know we're nearing the end here, but I think there's some questions here that are really helpful to sorry, go back to the guide to Iceland improves, this one. Okay. So the confusing thing about these tools from Google is that they make it really hard to understand what to focus on. Where it says origin summary, it's a really vague term. What that means is your entire website. That's what you want to focus on. Mm-hmm. The field data and that stuff above that is generally about the specific URL you typed in. So in this case, it's the Guide to Iceland homepage. It's an important page, obviously, but it doesn't tell the whole story. Origin summary is the whole story. It's the entire website, the way they're looking at it. And you want to be able to pass across your website, not just on your homepage, especially given what Siggy just said. Most pages, most landing pages are often not your homepage. There's some sort of a deep link. That's number one. Number two, I'm seeing some questions here about first contentful paint versus largest contentful paint. It's so confusing, but go look at that Guide to Iceland page that's coming from Google. There's 3 bars there that matter the most. It's in the origin summary, so ignore the stuff in the field data, look at the origin summary. Ignore the first contentful paint as well. Focus on the largest contentful, so the ones with the blue ribbon on it, those are the core of vitals. I don't know why they continue to put first contentful paint there. I think it just confuses people. Largest contentful paint is very similar. It's a close cousin metric, but it's a better metric. And it's, you know, there's no need to sort of try to optimize for both. Just optimize for largest contentful paint. If you do that, your first contentful paint will be good by default. And largest contentful paint is what Google is measuring. So I think they may have put 4 in there because it would look awkward to put 3. I don't understand, honestly. It's a really weird thing.
I know that so when they initially announced the Core Web Vitals, it was the largest contentful paint wasn't there. Yeah. They added that later into the Lighthouse metric tool and identified that was more important. But I agree. Why haven't they removed the first contentful?
Yeah, I mean, we're getting questions about it because it obviously creates confusion. So, and all those little bar charts that you see there, focus on first input delay, focus on the bars at the bottom, origin summary, and look at the 3 that have the ribbon on it. FID, LCP, and CLS. That tells you how you're actually doing across your whole website. What you want, and this is so confusing, I know, what you want is that green bar to be above 75%. So it doesn't even tell you what those bars mean, but basically what that means is that for largest contentful paint, for Guide to Iceland, 80% of their pages are faster than 2.5 seconds, which is the threshold for largest contentful paint. There was another question about what are the thresholds. You'll get our slide deck, and on a previous slide, the one I presented, we have each of the thresholds in there. It's 2.5 seconds for largest contentful paint, and you need 75% of your users to be faster than that. And in this case, Guide to Iceland's at 80%, therefore they're green. If they were at 74%, it would be, you know, the overall score would not be green. It would probably be, you know, orange, yellow, whatever that middle color is. So hopefully that's helpful, Carrie. I don't know. You know, we are happy to engage on a one-on-one basis, do custom audits of your website that go well beyond these tools. Happy to answer other questions if there are any, or, you know, really defer to Carrie in terms of how much time we have or what we should do.
Sure, we are at time. We have we do have this recording available as well as the presentations, as Ajay said. So just really want to thank you for your time. Please do reach out to us for this presentation, the recording, and to Ajay's group for layer 0 for your evaluation. Very, very helpful. Really appreciate everyone's time and attendance here today.